zooming in.
That's great. I saw the
Gedalia
Zoom
zoomed in.
link. He sent the Zoom link, and I was debating at 6 something in the morning.
Yeah, it must have been a little early in the morning, but it was very nice. Okay. This is a mimer that I wouldn't be surprised at all if you've learned it, if not once, maybe even more. But it's a mimer that has to be learned over and over. Very important mimer. It's the last mimer that the Rebbe edited for us. Up to this point. We're hoping we're going to get some more by Myron once Mashiach comes. We're not giving up on Mashiach yet. Right, so up to this point, this is the last mimer the Rebbe edited. That was an interesting year to the extent that in Purim Katan, so the Rebbe edited a Purim mimer, and in Parshas V'yigash, the Rebbe said a Purim Sicha. Meaning that the Sikha was about Parshas V'yigash, but in the middle of the Farbrengen, Parshas V'yigash, and Tafshin and Beis, the Rebbe spent a great deal of time talking about Mordechai and Haman. And so, even though unfortunately the Rebbe got sick before Purim that year, we had our Purim Maimah, we had our Purim Sikha. We'll see. It's based on a very, very famous mimer of the Frierdiker Rabbi Taf Reish Pei Zion. When we get there, we'll talk about that. Now, you just finished the Kibbul Yehudim. Much of this mimer is based on the Kibbul Yehudim of the Frierdiker Rebbe. So there is parts of this mimer that we're going to go through very quickly because you just learned certain aspects of what the Rebbe says about Purim from Mendel when you were learning the Kibbul Yehudim. But the ikr of this mimer is not it is the Purim. It's a chiddush in Purim at the end. Right? That's really what this mimer, what's unique about this mimer. Okay, and what makes this mimer a mimer that everybody has to learn, and what makes this mimer basically the. I hate to use words like this. I feel like I'm in college or something. But the mission statement of our generation. Okay, I'm sorry I did it. I guess I should have put on my gargle when I said that. The mission statement. We have to write a constitution. The mission statement and the what do you call it? Flow charts. All these new words that I heard a new word in American history. Sometimes you hear something and then you hear it a number of times right away. I didn't know it existed, and then it showed up in a couple of conversations. Obviously, I wasn't the one that used the words because I never heard of them before. But a number of times on the same day, I believe in Florida, someone mentioned the notion of a helicopter mom.
Oh, yes.
I never heard of it. As soon as they said it, I understood what it meant. But that's such an interesting...
Very American concept.
It's such a new term, though.
What?
It's not such a new term.
No, it might not be. I just had never heard it. As soon as they said it, obviously...
You don't have them here in Israel.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, right. We have Jewish mothers here in Israel just as much as anyone else. But it's true. Mothers in Israel, a lot of them send their children off to war, so they are a little less... they believe in the fact that their children can actually turn into a productive adult.
I'm not sure one equates to the other, but... Saying that because I served, not because
I
wouldn't just
assume is overprotective of her son. Sending your son off to war is not,
Sort of the antithesis of being
the
overprotective.
antithesis of that idea.
No, for sure. I'm not sure that linked to productivity after.
Right. But anyway, so I heard that. So I don't think, maybe, who knows, maybe I'll use it one day. Helicopter mom. I did hear from a bunch of people that, I'd love to come to Israel to learn, but my mother won't let me. So my mother won't let me come to Israel.
That's a pretty good
It's too dangerous, right?
It's too dangerous, that's what they said?
Yeah. They'll let them go to an Ivy League college, but they won't. But actually, it was interesting. There was a young man. I wasn't part of the conversation. I was just sitting next to them. There was an older couple that came to the University of Miami for Shabbos because their daughter was a freshman, so they just came to spend Shabbos in the university, which I think is very common. So the father was talking to one of the students and just asking him, where are you from? What do you do? So the student said, well, he started in Dartmouth, but he transferred to here.
Really?
So he said, well, that's interesting. Why'd you do that? He said, oh, the anti-Semitism in Dartmouth was just impossible. I couldn't deal with it, and so I left. So he said, well, how, other than people demonstrating for murderers, what exactly was the problem? So he said, well, professors were marking me down 10 to 15% on everything I did. And then telling me afterwards why. I mean, they couldn't write it on a piece of paper, but they would tell him.
Because you're a Jew.
And you're pro-Israel.
Wow.
That's serious stuff. Like that's Nazi Germany in the 30s. That's real. That's not. So he left. He said, I can't hang around here. This is sick. So Miami's not at all. Florida B'chalal, but University of Miami B'chalal, generally, specifically, is very Jewish friendly. But one of the biggest restaurants on the campus is run by Chabad, and it's kosher, and everybody's there, not just Jews.
Awesome.
Okay. With the blessing of the president of the campus, she used to come all the time. I don't think she was Jewish. She used to come. She just thought it was a great idea. She also liked the food. Okay, let's go. It happens to also be shaykh to next week's parsha, but obviously that's not why we're learning it. Yes, we're learning it before Purim because it's also reasonable to learn it before Purim. But there's a chiddush at the end relative to the whole idea of Kibbul Yehudim that's really quite astounding. So I know you learn the end of Kibbul Yehudim, which that means we'll be able to go through that relatively quickly. Veata tetzave b'nei Yisrael v'yichu elecha Shem zayizach kosis lemar la'alos ner tamid. Okay. A pasuk in next week's, the first pasuk in next week's parsha. Okay, the Rebbe is going to ask 5 questions in that pasuk. Ve'ata tetzave b'nei Yisrael. You should command the Jewish people. V'yichu elecha, and they should bring to you Shem and zayizach. Shem and zayis, all of it. Zach, pure. Kosis lamor, crushed. Kosis is crushed, as a luminary, as a source of light. Lalois ner tamid, to bring up light, a constant ner. Okay, that's the pasuk. Now the Rebbe is going to ask again, as we said, 5 questions in the pasuk. One of the questions will only be answered at the very end of the mimer, but you're used to that. Some of them will be answered relatively quickly. You're used to that too. It's known the careful reading of this. In other words, the questions that would be asked. In all of the commandments of the Torah, when the Kadosh Baruch Hu talks to Moshe Rabbeinu and tells Moshe Rabbeinu to command the Jewish people to do something, there's a lashon used. Nemar, generally, what is that lashon? Tzaves b'nei Yisrael v'chiyetze b'zeh. Command the Jewish people. Yadaber Shem el Moshe lemar. Tzaves b'nei Yisrael v'marta leim. Command the Jewish people and say to them, etc., etc., etc. That happens many, 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 many times in Chumash. Right? The most common pasuk in Chumash, obviously, is V'yadaber Shem el Moshe lemar. Appears 69 times in the Chumash. The Kadosh Baruch Hu spoke to Moshe to say to the Jewish people. Right? Not saying. That's the wrong translation. Right? Kadosh Baruch Hu spoke to Moshe to say to the Jewish people. So this is obviously rather shocking that it says Veata tetzave, you will command. So both the language is strange because usually it says Tzaves b'nei Yisrael, and also the emphasis on the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu seems to be the one commanding. Right? So the content is strange, and the Rebbe asks both of those questions. V'kan nemar Veata tetzave b'nei Yisrael. Here it says Veata tetzave b'nei Yisrael. So that's the language. That's the lashon problem. And to add, the careful reading of those words, it's not simply about lashon in the language, which we just mentioned, also in the content. The lashon, the language of Veata tetzave, mashma seems to indicate that Moshe is the one commanding. Now, obviously, Moshe is not the one commanding; the Kadosh Baruch Hu is commanding. Understand? Our Moshe, who is shaliach limser Yisrael, Moshe is simply the shaliach to give over to the Jewish people as sivur Kadosh Baruch Hu, the command of Kadosh Baruch Hu. So why in this pasuk does it emphasize v'lama nemar Veata tetzave? It seems to emphasize Moshe Rabbeinu is the one giving the commandment. Otherwise, just say tzav, and therefore it's somewhat generic. And obviously we know it's Moshe Rabbeinu, but Moshe Rabbeinu is not the source of the mitzvah. Whereas here it seems to be Veata tetzave, you command the Jewish people. This is coming from you. It's not coming from you. It's coming from the Eibishter. And this is one of the 613 mitzvahs in the Torah. They all come from the Eibishter. If someone says even one doesn't, then he's has no chelik in Torah Yisrael, according to the Rambam. So obviously this is hard to understand. But lama them are about the tetzave. So those are the first two questions. Gam tzarich lavan, we also have to understand. Mashkos v'yichoi lechem. They should bring to you shemen zayzach. They should bring the oil to you. Why is it strange to bring the oil to Moshe? What's the oil for?
It's anointing oil.
No.
No.
Okay.
It's wrong.
And
Aaron likes the menorah, not Moshe. Not Aaron, okay, likes the menorah. What's Moshe going to do with this oil? Give it to Aaron, right? So just give it to Aaron. They know who Aaron is. They know where he is. Right? Matter of fact, they know him better than they know Moshe Rabbeinu. Right? So just take the oil to Aaron. Nope, it comes to Moshe first. Right? So Gam tzarich lavan mashkos v'yichoi lecho. She'aviu Hashem and l'Moshe. Elecho. The Lechura at first glance, Kavan Shalos and Neder, since the lighting of the candles, I saw you the Ada, and it was done by Aaron Akayan. Lama Utzach Lahavi is Hashem and Moshe. Why do you have to bring the oil to Moshe? And then Moshe is simply going to give it to Aaron. Question 3. Gam tzarich lavan. We also have to understand. Mashkos of Shemen, Zayazach, Kosis Lamaor, crushed as a luminary. You would think the simplest way of saying that, the Lechura, the Rebbe says, Havele Lemar, it should have said, Shemen Zayzach Kosis Laha'ir, to illuminate. A verb, not a noun. Ma'or is a noun. Crushed as a luminary, crushed as a source of light. Just say crushed, to burn, to illuminate.
Why do you? I normally hear it translated as crushed for the luminary. Why crushed as a luminary and stuff here? I don't. Maybe in.
I don't know. Look, 2, 4.
I feel like the third question is like weaker than so far out of the four. The weakest out of the four.
We don't vote. We just learn.
True.
Okay. What the third question we just asked?
No, the one before, but with bringing the Moshe, that he is the leader, so like he'll delegate.
That's your answer to the question. Okay.
Right.
The fact that you have an answer to the question doesn't mean it's a weak question. It just means you have an answer to the question. Right? That's okay. That doesn't mean it's not a question. That's okay. But I will gently trod and say, I'll bet the Rebbe's answer is better than my
I'm sure it is.
So that's why we don't vote on questions. That doesn't mean it's what you're saying is reasonable. That might be a question that I have an answer for. Okay. But you are still answering a question, so the question's a question. Right? Rashi answers a question, the Ramban still thinks there's a question, he can answer it differently. There's still a question, even though Rashi answered it.
Rabbi, can you repeat the first two questions?
Language and content. Why does it say you commanded? It should say command.
Yeah.
So the language is strange, and the content seems to indicate that Moshe is the source of the commandment, which is obviously not the case. Okay, so that's question 1 and 2. Question 3 is, why is the oil going to Moshe? Question 4 is, why does it say Shemen le Ma'or? It should say Shemen la Ha'ir. What's the Shemen going to do? It's going to be lit and therefore illuminate. But there's no verb, there's a noun. And the last question, which will be the last thing answered in the Maimer, Gam tzarich lavan, the pasuk shel achrei, the pasuk after the words says, Nemar mi erev ad boker, that the candle is lit in the air in the erev and it burns ad haboker until the morning. V'kan nemar, and here it says la los ner tomi, a constant light. Now that's also a question you could theoretically answer. Say, what does it mean constant? Every day, and every day it burns in the book. That's true. But that's an answer to the question. Right? There's still a question. Why is it referred to as a ner tamid here, and why the very next pasuk it tells me that it doesn't burn all the time. It only burns from erev ad boker. It has to be relit every night.
Sorry, the second question of the content. What was specifically weird about the content? What's specifically weird about the content again?
That Moshe, that seems to be emphasizing Moshe as the source of the mitzvah. It's not.
Yes.
It's just the shaliach. Okay. Again, 5 questions. Strange language, Veata tetzave. The normal language is tzav. Second question, the content, Veata tetzave. Why we seem to be emphasizing by this strange language that Moshe is the source of the commandment, which is not true. Right. Third question. Why is the oil being brought to Moshe? It should be brought to Adam. Similar question relative to paraduma. Paradum was also brought to Moshe. Who's gonna shech the paradum and do? I don't know. Same question is asked in Parshas Chukas. Different answers. Same question. Both in Chassidus and Nikla, different answers, but in Chassidus especially different answers. The fourth question is kasis la ma'or as opposed to kasis la ha'ir. And the fifth question is time. Why the strange language regarding the seeming the constancy of it, and yet the next pasuk says no, it's from Erev Adbeka. Again, that's easily answered. It's still a question. I mean, the answers in the minor is going to be absolutely astounding. Okay, so now we're going to spend some time learning the Frierdiker Rebbe's mimer on Kibul Yehudim. The Rebbe generally, as we know, explains things in Chassidus based on Maimarim of the previous Rebbeim. Most specifically the previous Rebbe, but not always, obviously. But that's his Rebbe. But Ma'amar HaYedua, certainly Yedua, and we'll talk about that in a second. Dibur Masva Kibul Yehudim, Shenemar B'Purim Katan Tafresh Pei Zayin. So this mimer was said, as you can see, on Purim Katan Tafshin Mem Aleph. Okay, that's 1981. Okay, it was given to us, as you can see in the title page, as an edited mimer in Purim Katan Tafshin Nun Beis. That's when Rebbe edited this mimer and gave it to us. Again, as I said, this is the last edited mimer we got from the Rebbe. Rebbe gave it out. Didn't just show up. Rebbe gave out the mimer. Now, why is that Yedua? That was a very, very famous Farbrengen. Purim Katan Tafresh Pei Zayin. It's basically they were looking to arrest the Frierdiker Rebbe because they wanted to eradicate the Frierdiker Rebbe. So that event was a rather major part of their ammunition against the Rebbe, because in that Farbrengen, so the Rebbe talked about Haman and modern day Haman, and how no one has to be afraid of the modern day Haman, just like we defeated Haman then, we will defeat Haman now. Now, obviously the NKVD, which was the KGB in those days, they were in the audience and they were listening to this. The Rebbe's mother came in and begged him to stop talking. In the middle of the Farbrengen, she came in and he said, no, I have to say this. And the Rebbe tore his shirt open and bare his chest and said that I'll bleed to death before I allow myself to be pushed down by these people. It was a very, very major event, right, that led to the arrest, that led to the liberation of Gimel Tammuz and Yom Shabbos.
Yeah.
I imagine. Right. So it was back welcome. It was a very, very incredible Farbrengen, that Farbrengen. And the Rebbe refers to these things that's said in that Farbrengen often. Mavar Kreichus Marchami Admar, but Ma'amara Yedu Dibur Masel Kibul Yudim Shnember Purim Katan Tafresh Pei Zayin. Farbrengen in the middle of Soviet Russia. Stalin was fully in power by then. The tzivui, tetzave, tzavta v'chibur. Rebbe is answering our first questions. The word tzivui, and we know this from Chassidus B'chlal, Tanya, that the word tzivui comes from the word tzavta. A tzevet is a crew, a bunch of people who work together. Mitzvah is that which connects us to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. So Veata tetzave can mean you command. Veata tetzave can also mean you connect. So now what are you connecting? So you're connecting the Jewish people, so that can mean one of two things, or both. You're connecting the Jewish people to each other, or you're connecting the Jewish people to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. V'zeo, we're going to see that at first it's going to talk about connecting the Jewish people to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And at a certain point, I was also going to talk about the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu is that which connects the Jewish people to the Jewish people. Yesterday, Baruch Hashem, I had room on the flight from Tel Aviv from New York to Warsaw. There were 4 seats across in the middle, and there was a guy sitting on that aisle, and there was me sitting on this aisle, and 2 seats in between, which was very, very nice. And he sat down. We had been talking on the way into the plane, also, he and I. It was pretty obvious that he grew up in a kibbutz because he knew absolutely nothing about anything Jewish. It was really quite astounding. As soon as you run into an Israeli like that, you just assume they grew up in a kibbutz. And I found out 8 hours later that he did, but it was pretty obvious from the beginning. Very, very nice. That one of the first things he did once he sat down was he looked at me and he took out a picture of the Rebbe from his wallet and he said, "Are you connected to him?" I said, "Yeah, we all are." Kashrus connects to Jewish people. Unbelievable. So he put on tefillin. He put on tefillin. I finished davening. I asked him if he wanted to put on tefillin. I was very surprised he said yes. I was going to ask, but I was very surprised he said yes. He said, "Yeah." I thought I'd do it after the flight, but I might as well do it here. So yeah, it's okay. I was surprised. Of course, unfortunately, it was a lefty, and that was a pain. I was looking at it. There were two Lubavitchers sitting 5 rows back. I asked if one of them was a lefty, but no, we didn't. So I had to put it upside down, but it's all right. God was happy. Mm-hmm. But it was just so interesting, thinking of Veata tetzave. He takes out a picture of the Rebbe to show that somehow we have something in common. So. וזהו ואתה תצווה בני ישראל, שמשה הוא המקשר ומחבר את בני ישראל עם הרי סוף. Moshe is the one who connects the Jewish people to, and it's very interesting that the Rebbe uses the word, and we'll see this, Or Ein Sof. Or Ein Sof meaning the highest levels of godly light, the infinite light, which we learned about Basil Gani, Tafshin, Chaf Hey, and Mem Hey, and we didn't learn it in Shir, but this year's Maimarim are all about Or Ein Sof, L'mayla, Adein Ketz, L'matmat, Adein Tachlis. Right? Or Ein Sof, meaning the highest levels of the Eibishter. The Moshe Rabbeinu is the one that connects the Jewish people to the Eibishter. Moshe is what's called a Mamutza Mechaber, the intermediary that connects. Now you might ask the obvious questions, but the reasonable question, why do I need Moshe Rabbeinu to connect to Kadosh Baruch Hu? I'm a Jew and I'm connected to Kadosh Baruch Hu. That's true, there's no question. I was going to explain what this means. But it is, if a person takes a step back and looks at the way the Eibishter created the world and the way the Eibishter runs the world for whatever reason, and this isn't necessary, everything that happens in the world is simply a function of one thing and one thing only, the Ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There is nothing that is necessary. There's nothing that has to be. Everything that is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants it to be. There does not have to be 10 spheres. There could be 12, there could be 8, there could be none. The Eibishter can do whatever he wants, however he wants. And every single level of reality outside of the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu exists solely because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants that level of reality to exist. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, for whatever reason, he could have done it another way, he wants the Jewish people to connect to him through someone called Moshe Rabbeinu. And if you read the Torah, it's pretty obvious. Right? Could the Eibishter have given us the Torah directly? Obviously, he could have given us the Torah directly. Right? Could the Eibishter have led us through the desert without someone called Moshe? Of course the Eibishter could have led us through the desert with someone. Could the Eibishter take us out of Mitzrayim without Moshe? Of course the Eibishter could take us out of Mitzrayim without Moshe. Right? The Eibishter can do whatever he wants. For whatever reason, the Eibishter seems to run the world through someone named Moshe. Now, based on the Zohar, that's not something that was one-off. It's pretty clear in the Torah that Moshe Rabbeinu gives a certain power, a certain reality to someone named Yoshua, who then becomes the Moshe Rabbeinu of his generation. Okay, so theoretically someone could say, if they have issues with the idea that there should be someone called Moshe in every generation, right? Someone could say, well, that was a one-off or a two-off, or that was just a few generations and that was necessary. You could say that, except you can't, because the Zohar says that there's an expression of Moshe in every generation. So that's just the way the Eibishter runs the world, in every generation. Right? Is it obvious who the Moshe Rabbeinu is in a particular generation? Some generations it's more obvious, some generations it's less obvious. It becomes less obvious if there's more people of that stature. Right? Who is the Moshe of the generation in Rabbi Akiva's generation? They're all there, right? Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Meir. Who? I don't know. Right? Okay. That's harder to say. Rav and Abaya. Who was the Moshe That's not my problem. Baruch Hashem. They were probably Chassidim of Rav and Chassidim of Abaya, and they were banging into each other all the time, arguing who's the Moshe Rabbeinu of the generation. Whatever. Right? But that is the way the Eibishter runs the world, and so that's what this pasuk is saying, that you, Moshe, are the one that connect the Jewish people to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, what does that mean? So we're going to have to understand that. Because obviously a Jew has an essential connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, just because they're Jewish and they have a Jewish soul. And since Moshe affects the Jewish people, and again, the Rebbe says in brackets, if he connects them with our Ein Sof, exactly how that works is not so clear, because after all, I thought I have an essential connection to the Eibishter by virtue of the fact that I have a Nefesh Elokis, and my Nefesh Elokis is mushrash in Atzmus, is sourced in the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So exactly what Moshe is doing, we'll see. So, but the Rebbe says something else here. He hasn't explained that at all. All he's saying is that's the reality. But by virtue of that, what happens? There comes about an elevation and an addition in Moshe. Meaning Moshe, so to speak, grows as a result of the fact that he connects the Jewish people to the Eibishter. Now, that is somewhat intuitive to the extent that generally if someone fulfills their purpose, so then they obviously, they themselves become closer to the Eibishter as a result of fulfilling that purpose, because that's who they are and what they're all about. Okay, so that makes sense. But what might we have explained right now, even though the Rebbe doesn't say it explicitly? What question that we had?
First one.
Well, we're talking about the language of the first, for sure, but not in that line, not the line I just read. The first part of the line, which is Veata tetzave b'nei Yisrael, I get it. What's the second half of the line we just read? What does it seem to explain?
So the token, emphasizing Moshe is the one.
Well, but the token is that you're connecting the Jewish people to the Eibishter. That is the token. I mean, what we said in the first three lines here seems to, now we don't understand the answer at all yet, but it seems to be an embryonic expression of the answer to the first two questions. Why does it say Veata tetzave? Because it doesn't mean you're commanding the Jewish people. It means you're connecting the Jewish people, and therefore it has to be Veata, and it has to be tetzave. Okay, fine, I get that. What did we just learn? By virtue of Moshe doing that, what happens? He's elevated. Okay, so what might we have explained?
Also number 3.
Yeah, why? What does it say?
For giving the oil.
The Jewish people are giving something to Moshe as a response, as a result of Veata tetzave b'nei Yisrael. They're going to bring something to you. They're going to elevate you. Oh, okay. I have no clue how this works at this point, but and the Rebbe doesn't even say that, but that's certainly hinted at in those words, right? They'll bring to you something. Moshe and Yisrael are like the Rosh and the Regel. What's Rabbeinu? Moshe's Rabbeinu. What's Rebbe? Rosh B'nai Yisrael, the head of the Jewish people. Moshe Kosev, and Moshe himself says this in Parshas Baloischo, which is shaykh to the menorah. Sheish me'es elef ragli ha'am asher anechu b'kirbay. The 600,000 feet of the people that I am in their midst, that I'm amongst them. Okay, so simple pshat in that pasuk is Moshe is talking about the fact that there's 600,000 people and they're sort of hard to take care of. But what does it mean in Panemius? Let's see. The Kol Yisrael Him Reglaim de Moshe. All of the Jewish people are the Reglaim of Moshe. Moshe, interesting, refers to Am Yisrael. He doesn't say Sheish Me'es Anshe Ha'am. Right? It says Sheish Me'es Ragli Ha'am, the Reglaim, the feet of the Am. And the Am are like feet, legs. Asher Anochi Bekirbei, that I'm in their midst. The Kol Yisrael Him Reglaim the Moshe. Umeshu Reish Lahem, and Moshe is the head of them. Ukemei, and similar to Sheba Adam, Haraglayim Meilichim Es Reish Lemakim Shereish Mitzad Atzmei Eina Yachol Lagia L'Sham. The legs of our legs take us to a place that our head can't get to by itself. Right? So the people, what's the Rebbe explaining? The idea of the people bringing something to Moshe that, as a result of Moshe connecting them to the Eibishter, so they bring something to Moshe. So that's clearly what the Rebbe is explaining by virtue of bringing this pasuk in Balaischa. That what? That Moshe is the Rosh, they're the Reglayim. What's the advantage of Reglayim? Well, if your Rosh wants to get downstairs, it is rather dependent on your Reglayim to take it there. It can't do that. Now, the only reason the Reglayim are able to take the Rosh there is because there's a Rosh. But without the Rosh, that doesn't work. But without the Reglayim, it also doesn't work. Right?
Is this similar to, I think, maybe chapter 3, chapter 4 of Tanya?
Why?
When the Alter Rebbe describes having a leader of the generation? I might misquote
Well,
the
we're
chapter.
definitely talking about a leader of a generation, but I don't.
You're saying to attach yourself to, or
Yeah, the head can't do anything without the
Chapter
feet.
2, well, he doesn't say that
Chapter
in Tanya. In the second chapter, the Rebbe talks about it. Right, yeah, there's definitely the idea of what it means to have a Rosh, a Moshe, a Rebbe. Right? Commercial ba'adam she'raglayim me'elichem es haresh l'makom she'resh mitzad atzmei yachol lagia l'sham. Okay. K'meichein hu b'Moshe Yisrael. So too the relationship of Moshe and the Jewish people. Shal yedei Yisrael, by virtue of Yisrael, haraglayim de Moshe, misvasef ilui b'Moshe. There's an addition, a greater elevation of Moshe himself. Oh, and this is what Moshe means. Zeu mashkos of sheishmeis elef ragli amasher neichi bekirbei. Now, the Rebbe says, fascinating pshat in it. Sha'al yedei ragli ha'am, as a result of the ragli ha'am, as a result of the people, nimshach hagilui da neichi bekirbei shel Moshe. It's revealed the gilui of Anochi v'Elokecha, the highest levels of godliness, right? Anochi, Atzmus, Havaya, or Elokecha, Kelim, 3 different levels of reality that are expressed in the first 3 words of the Seres Dibros. Anochi, Havaya, Elokecha, the Anochi, the revelation of Anochi Bekir B'Shemesha. Why is Anochi Bekir B, so to speak, Moshe is saying? Because of the Sheish Mes Ragli Ha'am. Now, it's interesting that if you look in the simple shot, in the pasuk doesn't say Asher Anochi Bekir B, it says Anochi Bekir Bo, which is interesting. Right? Now that, according to what the Rebbe just said, that Anochi Bekir Bo is relating to Moshe. Right? Generally, another pshat in Chassidus is, how is it that Am Yisrael, what is it that ultimately connects Am Yisrael to the Eibishter is the fact that Anochi Bekirbai, that I am within them, because Moshe Rabbeinu, the spark of Etzem and Neshama of every single Jew, the Yechida Shebenefesh of every single Jew, is a spark of the Yechida Shebenefesh of Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe is called the Yechida Klolis, the general Yechida, and each and every one of us has a spark of that Neshama, and that's our Yechida Pratis. So that's the connection, that's the metaphysical explanation of the connection of the Yid to the Eibishter through Moshe. But here, interesting enough, the Rebbe is learning this in order to explain something else. Not the first part of the pasuk, not the part of the pasuk that says that I connect you to the Eibishter. But here, the Rebbe is using this pasuk to explain how you elevate me. So the Sheish Meis Ragli Ha'am, Asher Anochi Bekirbei, what is it that allows a Anochi to be Beker of Moshe, Dafka the Sheish Meis Ragli Ha'am? And we'll see right after Pesach, I think exactly when, I don't know, but there's 3 Maimarim that I want you to see in the next relatively short time. So this Maimar, B'yem Shtei Asar, which is Shaykh to Pesach, and Zois Chukas. So we'll probably do that after Pesach. And those three Marim, you are free to disappear and leave me in your dust once you've seen those three Marim. Then you can, right? But if you haven't seen those three Marim and learned them seriously, then you have to stick around and be annoyed by me in the morning. That's just the way it goes. Because without those three Marim, there's a hole in understanding how the Rebbe understands us and life and God and what our generation's about, etc. So we elevate Moshe by virtue of the fact that Moshe is in our midst and connects us to the Eibishter. Because Moshe does what he's ultimately destined to do, and that brings about an elevation of Moshe. Obviously, brings about a great elevation in us also. But that's the Rebbe hasn't said it, he's going to say it in a minute. That's v'yichoi lecho. Now this is all very embryonic. We don't understand any of this yet. We're just getting the equation, but I don't understand how the equation works, which is what the Maimon is about, and that's why my Maimon take 10 pages and not half a page. Right? To just tell me the equation, that's very easy. And that, again, I'm not flying the flag. I'm just explaining the difference. That's the difference between Polish Chassidus and Chabad Chassidus. Chabad Chassidus will then spend 8 pages explaining what we just said. Right? Polish Chassidus will just tell you the idea. Right?
What are examples of Polish Chassidus? Like
Melech, Kedushas, Levi. I mean, there's a lot of Svarim, but those Mary Melech, incredibly important sefer.
Yeah.
Right? The Kedushas Levi, unbelievably important sefer, quoted by the Rebbeim all the time. Sfas Emes. Sfas Emes said that everything he wrote was based on Torah and the Likutei Torah of the Alter Rebbe. It's 5 lines. And so if you know all of Torah and Likutei Torah Baal Peh, you can understand those 5 lines of the Sfas Emes. If you don't, it's still a beautiful question and answer. It's a beautiful idea. Right? Hey Shvat is the yard side of the Sfas Emes. So we used to, the Lubavitch Shul and the Ger Shul used to be right next to each other in Harnof. They're not. So they used to come into our shul and Hey Shvat, they'd make a little thing. And they'd always walk into the shul and start asking us questions in Sfas Emes, like what's pshat here, what's pshat here. And they know it's all, the Sfas Emes said it's all based on the Alter Rebbe. So it's just a little spitzla. When people first come to Lubavitch and they think they're going to sit down and learn something before Shabbos for 10 minutes, something they can say over at the Shabbos table, and they open up a book and it's 9 pages long. They go, I don't have time to learn 9 pages. Okay, well, then open up Sfas Emes. Because they're not, I mean, okay, Lubavitch is now, we've published all these books in English with little spitzlach all over the place. Okay, fine, but if you're going to sit and learn a sikha, you're going to have to sit down and learn for an hour. I mean, that's just the way it is. Now, you should be able to then take that and say it over in 6 or 7 minutes at the Shabbos table. That means you understand the sikha. Because after all, really what the Rebbe is doing is asking a question, giving an answer. Now, there might be all sorts of unbelievable details in there, but you should be able to basically explain this is the basic question, this is the basic answer, and do that relatively quickly. Right? Because obviously saying over the whole Sikha of the Shabbos table, you're going to lose people rather quickly.
This speaks Parsha.
What?
This speaks Parsha.
Yeah, so, people who can't say it in 5, 6, 7 minutes are just going to lose who they're talking to. My brother, the middle brother, some of you might have met, my older brother, he lives here in Yerushalayim. So there's a brother in between us, who's the rich lawyer. So he taught some courses he's a lawyer in Vancouver, so there's a law school, so they asked him to teach some classes. So he taught classes in law schools. I said, well, how was that? He said, well, it took me a while to figure it out, but it's very, very interesting. He said, 7 minutes. I said, well, 7 minutes. He said, every 7 minutes you have to move, stand up, sit down, change the topic. He said, Americans, Canadians are the same. Not exactly the same, not the 51st state, let's not go there.
They're both Americans.
I was there when they beat them in hockey. Oh my goodness gracious. It was a big thing in both sides of the border, I must say. They were very into it. So North Americans have basically a 7-minute attention span maximum. Why? Now, it might be changing because
It
it's probably less now on a certain level, but the reason it was then was the only source of entertainment in those days, it wasn't phone, because there weren't. It was television. And there's an advertisement every 7 minutes. So your average American had a 7-minute attention span and couldn't hold a cup for longer than that, because then they were going to be sold Tide detergent and they could turn their head off. Isn't that interesting? He said that, and he talked to people about this and talked to professionals about it. He said that 7 minutes. You've got 7 minutes, and then move, stand up, sit down. Okay, now we're going to talk about something different, because they're not going to be with you after 7 minutes. Now that
It's much shorter now.
Well, it might have. See, it's interesting because now people are watching things for longer because there's no commercials because they're watching it on this thing, right?
You have ads.
What if they're watching a movie? There's ads.
No, YouTube is like ads. You know?
Okay, you pay, but you're right. Most of what people watch is 45 seconds a minute. 2 minutes is already like, whoa.
Yes,
you're gonna
2
have to
minutes is
watch
a long
2
time.
minutes. That's really a long time. And I've noticed now. I never noticed this before. I've noticed if you look up a news source, if you click on the article. So before you click on the article, it'll say how long it will take you to read the article. Meaning, if you don't have more than 3 minutes attention span right now, don't bother clicking it. That's just like, wow. I never know. I just noticed a little while ago. I said, look at that. What's that? Wow, 3 minutes. Does that mean that's how long it's going to take me to read this? And then I started looking. Sure enough, every article has a little thing. How long are you going to have to pay attention for? So 7 minutes in those days.
I'm totally guilty of that. I don't want to read a 45-minute piece.
Oh, for sure.
I don't want to read a
45
10-minute
minutes
piece.
I get.
I don't want to read a 10-minute piece. I don't want.
Yeah, okay. No, but it's very interesting.
I read a 10-minute piece in 2 minutes though. Doesn't it?
No, I would probably read it.
It is interesting. Whatever. Okay, so here Moshe has the Rebbe is teaching us how Moshe connects the Yidden to the Eibishter, but at this point we want to know how that elevates Moshe, and that's why the Rebbe brought Sheish Ragli Am. Usually Sheish Ragli Am is brought to explain that Anochi Bekirbei, that Moshe is in the midst of the Am, which is the first half of the equation. Here the Rebbe is using it to explain the second half of the equation. How we elevate Moshe by virtue of Moshe connecting us. It's really astounding. V'zeu, and this is pshat. Now the Rebbe ties it all up, and this is the end of this little paragraph. V'zeu, and this is all based on the Frierdiker Rebbe's Maimer and Tafresh Pei Zayin. And this is Veata tetzave b'nei Yisrael v'yichoi lecha shem and zayis v'gemer, etc. Gemer is etc. in a pasuk. V'chule is etc. in everything else. Okay, if you're ever wondering why there's one as opposed to the other. V'zeu v'atet tetzavos b'nei Yisrael v'yichoi lecha shem and zayis gemer, meaning finish the pasuk. Dal yedei shemeshe yitzava, by virtue of the fact that Meshe yitzava commands. But what does that mean? The akasha connects, binds, as b'nei Yisrael im orein seif. Al yedei zeh, by virtue of this, now the Rebbe says it explicitly, Yaviu b'nei Yisrael shem and zayis l'Moshe, they bring something to Moshe. V'yichoi lecha, that's v'yichoi lecha, she'yosifu teisofes or b'Moshe. They bring about a greater or in Moshe. Okay, so now again, we don't understand what any of this means, but we do understand. We've just answered the first three questions in the Maimer. Now again, I don't understand the answer, but I know what the answer is. I understand the equation. I don't know how the equation works. But we answered the first three questions. Manyen. There's a famous story of the Baal Shem Tov, davening with his Talmidim. And obviously, Baal Shem Tov was known to daven a rather long davening. He's not in a hurry. And what used to happen generally was the Chassidim would daven, and they daven whatever length they would daven, and then they would wait for the Baal Shem Tov. And when it came to Chazar Sashat, so they wait for the Baal Shem Tov to finish his tefillah, and then they would start Chazar Sashat. One morning, for whatever reason, they obviously, I don't know obviously, but I assume so that you and I would have this story so we would understand this. The Eibishter organized this all to happen. That they were waiting for the Baal Shem Tov, and they all decided that they would leave and come back when he would normally be finished. They would go do something and then come back. Because it would take that long often. So they all left. And they came back and Baal Shem Tov was wrapping up his tefillah. So they didn't understand. They said, well, this is when we always start Chazar Zashatz. Why is the Rebbe finished davening? So the Rebbe said that the only way I can get to where I have to get to is on your shoulders. And when you left, I couldn't get there. So I just finished davening. Which is really interesting. That's the story. It's a famous story of the Baal Shem Tov. Right? Now, most Rebbeim did not daven with their Chassidim. They wouldn't daven with their Chassidim all the time. Our Rebbe didn't daven with us until the men's Rebbe started coming down and davening with us 3 times a day. It was very rare for Rebbe to daven. Before that, Kriyas Torah, they would always make a minyan for Kriyas Torah outside the Rebbe's room. They'd make a minyan outside and lane, and the Rebbe would listen from the inside. If the Rebbe needed an aliyah, the Rebbe would come out and get an aliyah.
You daven b'yichud?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Most Rebbeim.
Just how come?
I don't pretend to understand why tzaddikim do what tzaddikim do. I have a hard enough time figuring out how to be an aspiring Beinoni. Tzaddikim are a different breed, do different things. Right? Yes, they follow the same Shulchan Aruch, but there are things that they do because they are who they are.
Rabbi, but wouldn't the Rebbe sit in a minyan
For Kriyas Torah, in the old days,
in order to get the minyan, and then he would go and daven by
No.
himself?
no. Sometimes the Rebbe would come to me. There were times when the Rebbe would come to Mincha, etc. But very often the Rebbe would just daven when the Rebbe davened. The Rebbe used to come back from the oil and sometimes daven Mincha at 9 o'clock at night in the winter. Had that work?
Rabbi Gold finished a story where he davened with Rebbe Mincha at like 11:45.
If you were around 7:70 and the Rebbe came back from the oil, he would, I remember once getting picked up at the airport by a student, dropped me off where I was staying with my in-laws who weren't in Grand Heights. So he dropped me off and then he realized, I didn't have mincha. So he forgot because he went to get me at the airport. So I felt bad. Then he said, wait a minute, I think the Rebbe's at the oil. Now this was before cell phones, right? So he had to call a friend. He used my in-laws' phone that was on the wall. There used to be such things. Used their phone and dialed and called up a friend and said, did Rebbe go to the oil today? Yeah. Is he back? No. Any news? He said, it's going to be a while. Okay, got in the car, drove back to Crown Heights. It was a 45-minute drive. Drove to Crown Heights, and the next day he and I talked. He said, yeah, I got mincha with the Rebbe. Now, how do you do that? So I don't know, but I'll just tell you a quick story that Rabbi Groner told me. That Tafshin Yud, right? Yom Kippur Tafshin Yud, last Yom Kippur of the Frierdiker Rebbe in this world. So the Frierdiker Rebbe used to have a minyan upstairs in his apartment, upstairs on the 3rd floor of 770. My 770 was not the Rebbe's house, it was the Frierdiker Rebbe's house. Right? When people say the Lubavitcher Rebbe's house, the Lubavitcher Rebbe's house. The Lubavitcher Rebbe's house was on President Street. So it was the Frierdiker Rebbe's house. So the Frierdiker Rebbe lived upstairs. And that's where Yechidus was with the Frierdiker Rebbe. And that's where they used to daven. In the later years, when the Rebbe wasn't as well, so the Rebbe didn't come down, they would go up. So Yom Kippur, there was a minyan downstairs where most people were davening. Downstairs wasn't the downstairs you might have seen. It was all there was the first floor, the walk-in to 770 and the small zal off to the right. That was what there was. There wasn't a big, huge basement down below. That was much later. So there was basically a minyan upstairs. 11, 12 people upstairs for the Frierdiker Rebbe. And the Rebbe, so they daven Shachris, Musaf, and then took a break. The Frierdiker Rebbe went into his room, the room where he used to have Yechidus. And he closed the door, and they were away. There was going to be a break, and then at a certain point, they davened Mincha and Ne'ilah. Rabbi Groner was one of the people there. So they were waiting. And they were, it was Yom Kippur, the afternoon, so people were resting. And then they expected the Rebbe to come out for Mincha. 2 hours before Shkia, whatever, 2 hours, 15 minutes, however people figure out, how long does it take to have Mincha and Me'ila, there's that cheshbon that everybody makes every year. Okay, so the Rebbe didn't come out. It was dark. Everybody downstairs was already gone. They had finished davening Marv and they were home. Still dark. Frida Rebbe opened the door, stayed there, asked that the minion, did he bring a minion into that room? He might have brought a minion into where he was. Right? He might have brought a minion into the room, I don't remember. Right? And davened in that room. They davened Mincha, Ne'ilah, and Ma'ariv after it was dark. Which means they fasted for an extra couple of hours. So then Rabbi Groner and the Rebbe our Rebbe walked downstairs. So Rabbi Groner asked the Rebbe, what was that? What happened up there? And the Rebbe's answer was, by Kabbalah's Pnei Rabbe als Desandrish. By being in the presence of your Rebbe, everything is different. So Rabbi Groner asked what the Rebbe means, and the Rebbe said that the Rebbe Shab came to visit the Frierdiker Rebbe, and as long as his father was with him in the room, he was going to stay with his father. When his father left, he opened the door, and then he davened with us. But the Rebbe's answer was, by Kabbalah's Pnei Rabbe als Desandrish. When you're in the presence of the Rebbe, everything's different. And that might Rabbi Groner didn't say this to me, but I mean, I put 2 and 2 together, and I think it's a reasonable equation that also explains why when the Rebbe is by the Frierdiker Rebbe is als Desandrish. So, that's the only time the Rebbe ever used to daven at strange times. Right? Was when the Rebbe was by the Frierdiker Rebbe. So then he'd come back and daven Mincha. Right? Never did that other than that. Only coming back from the Oil. Once the Rebbe davened a very, very, very late Shachris. It was Yom Tov Rishon of Sukkot Tafshin Nun Beis. So the Rebbe watched everybody take his lulav and esrog in the sukkah outside, and the Rebbe stayed there until 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then came into 7:70 to daven Shachris. That was the only time things like that happened. Everybody was very nervous. Because usually the Rebbe would shake lulav and esrog and then leave it, and people would just come and shake the Rebbe's lulav and esrog before they went into daven. But the Rebbe stayed there and watched everybody. So,
but can't you combine mincha with ma'ariv? Like, if a person misses the time for mincha, they can say
It's a new day.
hold on. I think first of all, I think he asked me, and let him finish the question.
no. But yeah, basically, like, a person could still get the time if they do it in the.
You can do what's called tashlum. You can do what's called a tashlum. So even though it's a different day, you can daven Mariv twice. Meaning you'll daven a regular Mariv and then daven another Shemon Esrei as a tashlum for mincha. So that you can do, right? 100%. That's not mincha. You're making up for the mincha that you didn't daven, right? So that you can do for one tefillah. Right? Meaning, if you missed mincha, you can daven 2 marivs. If you missed mariv, you can daven a second Shemon Esrei chakras. You fell asleep when you're tired. You fell asleep before davening mariv, and you woke up in the morning on your couch. Right? Oh my gosh, I can't believe it! I didn't daven mariv last night. So now what do? So you daven an extra Shemon Esrei. You can't daven the rest of it. Kriya Shema, you missed. But you daven an extra Shemon Esrei that after you finish Shemon Esrei of Shachris, first you do the one that you're davening, and then after that you daven another Shemon Esrei that's the same Shemon Esrei that you just daven. Meaning, if you missed Mincha Erev Shabbos, you could daven 2 Marivs on Shabbos, but you daven 2 Shabbos Marivs, right? Which is a little bizarre, but that's what you do.
I thought you can do that for like showers to Melukat and Marv to showers, but not Melukat to showers, not Melukat to Marv because it's a new day Dafka.
That's a Havamina of the Gemara because of Korbanos, but we pass them that you can daven. There's nothing that you can do even from. You can do even from if you didn't daven Mincha on Shabbos, you can daven 2 Marvs. Right. Right. Okay. So, and you daven the one that you're doing now. It's called a tashlim, but only one. If someone is chas v'shalom sick in a hospital, they didn't daven for a week, which can happen, right? They're not able to daven. Okay, so what do? The first time they daven, they'll daven twice. They can do one tashlim. I knew someone I was shaykh to, and I asked the Rav, what should he do? He said, daven. I don't remember what he davened first, or the mincha. I assume it was not shachris, right? Because I was a little long for it. I think it was mincha. So he davened 2 minchas to make up for one that he missed. Whatever it was, I don't remember what that was, but that was the answer I got from the Rav. To make up for the one that he missed.
That's not something we can plan, right? It's like,
No, you can't say I'm going to not daven mincha, daven 2 marivs.
Yeah.
No, it's if a person forgot. Or they were sleep is an illness. You fell asleep and you go, it's 8 o'clock at night that I completely missed mincha. It can happen, it's very easy to happen to a yeshiva talker because you figured you daven mincha at 10 to 2, which you do every single day, and for whatever reason that day you weren't in mincha at 10 to 2, and then at 7 o'clock at night you realize, I didn't daven mincha today. Because you're used to davening at a certain time. Anybody who has a regular time for davening, if they miss that time, it's very common. It's much easier to miss that davening b'chlal because they're just used to having it taken care of at a certain time. So there's such a but generally it's most tzaddikim did not daven in minyanim. The Kotzker, when he spent all those years in the room, so he used to open up the door just to watch Hagba.
Watch Hagba.
Just look at the Sefer Torah. The only time the Chassidim saw him for years. Generally, Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu davened in a minyan. No one saw Moshe Rabbeinu. Like Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't around. Were the Yidden davening in minyanim? No, it's the midbar. How did it work? I'm not sure. But if they davened in a minyan, he wasn't part of it. That's for sure. They did not see Moshe Rabbeinu walking around in the midbar. He was doing whatever he was doing. Okay, let's go a little further, so we can stop with the Rebbe speaking instead of me. Levar zeh, to explain all this, and we'll see where we're going next. Makdim b'maimer, he proceeds in the Maimer and says, Shemeshe Rabbeinu nikra Raya Mehemna. Moshe Rabbeinu is called Raya, which means shepherd, from the word ro'eh in Hebrew, Mehemna, from the word emuna, faith. And the Rebbe explains, the Shnei Perushim b'zeh. There's 2 explanations of the idea of Moshe Rabbeinu being Raya Mehemna. Shehu ro'eh ne'eman, that he is a faithful shepherd, Shel Yisrael. That the word Mehemna means faithful. Ushu zan umfarnes es Yisrael be'inyan emuna. The other pshat is that he nourishes the Jewish people in the matter of emunah. In other words, he's a shepherd of faith. Because the word Mehemna could be, it's based on the word emunah. So exactly what is the expression of Mehemna? Is it Raya Ne'eman, a faithful shepherd, meaning he's very faithful to do his job as the shepherd of the Jewish people? Or is that which he shepherds faith? He nourishes our emunah. And that's what the Rebbe will explain next. We'll see that tomorrow morning. No, we'll see that Sunday morning. Time warp. Where am I? What time zone is it?
Welcome back.
Just past those papers on. Yeah. It's nice to be back, I must say.
Thank you, Rabbi Kaplan.